The First Berserker Khazan, the secret love child of Nioh and Sekiro. You have the high skill combos and DPS pressuring from Nioh, while having the quick reflexes of parrying and well boss designs from Sekiro. Ever since I played the first beta, I knew this game had potential. So with the game officially out, I decided what better way to experience it than doing a single stat run, and I decided to let you, the viewers, to decide what stat I would level up, and y'all picked Willpower. So for my first playthrough of Khazan, I will only be leveling Willpower, and I sure as hell will be needing a lot of it in real life to get through this one. Also, make sure to like and subscribe if you would want to see more crazy runs like these, or just like seeing me suffer. With that said, let's get into the rules for this run. Rule number 1, I can only level Willpower and no other stat. Rule number 2, I can only use Netherworld as my only healing item. Netherworld is the game's Estus. Now, Khazan has other items that can heal you, but I decided I hate myself for some reason, so I only allowed this one type to heal. Number 3, I must beat all missions. Number 4, no summons. Can't be having help in a challenge run after all. And lastly, rule number 5, I must beat all bosses. With all that said, let's get this wild ride started. Starting off, we are told that Khazan was a great general of the Palos Empire, but the Emperor became corrupted by the nobles and betrayed Khazan and had him and his best friend Ozma sentenced to exile. Before exiling him, they brutally tortured him and cut out his tendons and his arms so that he can never use his arms again. While being transported, an unknown force saves Khazan and offers him a way to get revenge on those that betrayed him. Khazan accepts without hesitation. Simply, the story is a revenge plot. So, unlike other Souls-like games, you do not have classes. You just start off with no armor and just a dual-wielding weapon. So the first thing I did was pick a fight with a Yeti to get the Hound Helm. In Khazan, there are armor sets that have set attributes that you can gain when you have a certain amount of pieces on you, just like in Nioh, and the Hound set is one of the first ones you can get in the game. The reason I wanted this set was for the damage and stamina recovery increase, but more importantly the beast damage increase, since the first boss I'll be fighting is a beast type. With set armor explained, let me go over the basic combat mechanics. You have a basic attack called Swift Attacks that take up a little stamina and deal mild damage. You have Potent Blow, which is just your heavy attack that deals good damage, and of course you can charge your heavy attacks for bigger damage. You have a block that can mitigate damage at the cost of stamina, but if timed properly you can do a basic parry. In Khazan, there are 3 types of parries, but I'll explain each one in a bit. When attacking, you have a front damage and back damage. You can increase both of these through attributes, but overall back damage is higher than front damage. So if you're trying to go for big numbers, aim for that enemy behind. And lastly, there's combos and viscerals, but I'll go over that when we get to skills. With that enemy dealt with, I open a chest to get another Hound piece. I then break a Soul Stone, which is a currency you can use to increase your healing or Lakma gain and increase your spirit. These stones are hidden throughout each mission, and you'll have to find and destroy them to gain the currency. After that, I pick up a Fire Enhancer for the upcoming boss fight. I then pick a fight with a bear because there isn't anything more manly than fighting a giant bear shirtless. Upon killing the bear, I get another Hound piece from the bear and one from the chest behind it with a stronger weapon. Sadly, I only got 4 set pieces instead of 5, but 4 is enough to help with speeding up the boss fight. Before taking on the boss though, I level my willpower to 16, and while on stats, I will go over what each stat increases, since all stats are important in this game, like Nioh. Vitality increases health, damage, interestingly enough, weight, and attribute resistance. Endurance increases health, stamina, damage, and stamina recovery. Strength increases health, damage, weight, and receives stamina damage decrease. Willpower increases health, damage, stamina recovery, and guard stamina damage decrease. And lastly, proficiency increases health, damage, stamina damage, and dodge stamina cost decrease. So as you can see, each stat has a purpose, but for this run, I will only be allowed to level willpower. With all that jargon done with, let's get to the first boss fight, Yasokyōku. Since I played a good amount of the beta and the demo for this game, I already knew how to take on this boss. Really, all you need to do is parry his basic attacks and get some swift attacks in between parries. When you see him do his Superman punch, he will get stuck afterwards, which is a great time to get a combo off, or a nice time to do a charge attack from behind. Another time you can get a full charge attack off is after his full swing combo. Anytime I would stamina break him, I would make sure to do a combo to get as much damage off as possible before visceraling him from behind for big damage. Once you get him to half health, he kind of loses his shit and rips a massive chunk out of the ground. But no worries, all I had to do was dodge through it to be okay. After he throws an entire rock house at you, he will always go for his ice breath attack, which you can run around him to get free hits off. Also, be careful if you stay behind him too long, he can actually fall backwards, hitting you with his spikes on his back. Another thing is, if you're struggling with this boss, is the Yetis in this era have the same attack patterns besides a few moves, so you can practice parrying them to get the timing down, which I think is actually a really cool thing the devs did there, since it can prepare you for the upcoming boss fights, or help you out to go practice on an easier target. But, using the fire enhancer, and all the tips I just gave all of y'all, I easily no-hit Yutuga. Once beating Yutuga, the game gives you an option for easy mode or normal mode. Of course, with this being a challenge run and all, I went with normal mode. Now, real quick, I just want to go over my opinion on this. I honestly do not care if these games have a difficulty option or not, but I think the devs should have named easy mode, and normal mode, hard mode. There is a stigma with the word easy, especially in the West. I think if they would have changed the wording, a lot of people talking about how the game is too hard would be more inclined to play on easy if it was called normal. Remember, there's nothing wrong with playing on a lower difficulty. You bought the game with your own money, play it how you want to, but just remember there are some of us that do like the challenge of the game being difficult and overcoming that difficulty. With that said, let's move on. At the beginning of the next mission, I unlock the skill tree which allows me access to attack abilities and the javelin which both cost spirit to use. Each weapon in this game has its own skill tree and Khazan has his own personal skill tree. The thing I really like about this is the devs allowed you to reset your skill points free of charge, so you, the player, can freely test out different skills without the worry you spent a point on a skill that you find out you don't like. This is great for experimentation, build variety, and optimization for taking on bosses where one skill might be better for one boss while another one is better for another boss. To earn skill points is very straightforward. You just parry or use skills on enemies and you will level up your skill level to gain a point. So for mission 2, it's about giving the player the other two weapon choices, the great sword or the spear. For this run, I'll be sticking with the dual wielding since it has the highest scaling and willpower. I know some people are not a big fan of this game only having 3 weapons, but after beating the game, I think it was a wise decision on the devs' behalf, since it allowed the devs to well craft the boss fights in this game and not spread themselves out too thin with making dozens of different weapons and having to figure them out for each boss fight to handle it properly. Especially since this is their first Souls-like game, I think it was the wise decision. With that said, the mission also teaches the player about counterattacks, which is one of the 3 parries in the game, so let's go over them. You have your basic parry, which is just your timing the block as the attack hits, like in Sekiro. Then you have the counterattacks, which are specifically for parrying enemies' burst attacks, which are shown by a red character before it happens. For this parry, it's similar to Lies of P's parry, where the timing needs to be more precise to land. The way I like to look at it is you want to parry right as the attack would hit you, instead of before it would hit you. Then we have the final parry, Reflection, which is a skill that you can obtain in the common tree. Reflection is a parry that you can be used on some attacks, but not all attacks. I found any attack that has a slight delay to it, it can be used on. The timing for this parry is the opposite of the counterattack, where you need to be doing the parry a bit before the attack would hit you, but even more before than your normal parry, which does take some time getting used to. I don't have any game I can compare this parry to, so this seems to be unique to Khazan. The thing is about counterattacks and reflection is it takes massive chunks out of the enemy's stamina bar, which is why it's crucial you learn these 2 parries to help with boss fights and some elite enemies. But don't worry, I was able to manage most of the bosses without them, but towards the end I had to start learning them to help with winning fights. Also, if you're struggling with these 2 parries, in the skill tree when you meet the level requirement, you can put points into increasing the parry iframes, which greatly helps out with learning their timings. As stated, I didn't use counterattacks for a while because I was really bad at it, as you can see by me failing at it with the bear. But I do get better. With all that done, before taking on the boss, I level my willpower to 25, equip some higher quality hound gear, and finish using my last skill point. For skills, I went with Blowback for tick damage on parries, Ironclad to decrease stamina when using guard, Gale for quick charge attack, and to be able to increase my damage with vigor stacks, and finally Ruthless to take advantage of stun enemies. With his skills out of the way, it's time for the second boss, Blade Phantom, who was the mysterious individual who rescued Khazan, but not because he wanted to help him, but because he wanted to take over his body for his own use. As I have already stated, I have played the beta and demo, so I already knew how to do this fight. For phase 1, I just played it safe with parries and made sure to use Gale to start building up stacks of vigor for more damage. I also refrained from using any skills that cost spirit so that I could use more of them during the second phase. A quick tip, if you see him going for the grab, which all grabs are indicated by this sound effect, just dodge to the left and you'll completely dodge it. Any other direction and you'll get grabbed. Also, anytime he would finish a slam attack, I would make sure to run behind him to take advantage of thrusting that phantom booty from behind. With just that, I easily made it to phase 2. He will usually start off rushing you with claws and follow up with a spear throw. Just make sure after the spear throw you run away because the ground will blow up. He follows up with a string of attacks and ends with a hammer slam attack, which I usually dash around so I can get behind him to go Gale into Ruthless into Visceral for a big damage combo, which at this point just leaves him at about 15% HP. So just a few more parries and a well-timed javelin throw and the big old emo boy went down. Oh, also for those struggling with his burst attack, you can dodge to the right of it and it will set you up for some free back attacks. I was able to beat him before he did it, but I wanted to share that information with all of you. After the fight, Phantom Blade tries to take Khazan's body by force and Khazan basically tells him to go fuck himself. With Blade Phantom put in his place, I get access to the hub world, but before moving on, I would like to explain combos and viscerals, and I'll use my new bitch, Phantom Blade, as an example. So Khazan has a similar mechanic like Sekiro, where once you break the enemy's stamina, you can do a visceral attack. But unlike in Sekiro, it will not instantly kill the enemy or boss. In actuality, they are very weak on their own. So if you play like you would in Sekiro, you would actually be producing less damage than if you would be doing combos. Even just doing combos by themselves will dish out higher damage than just a standalone visceral, as you can see right here. It's best when playing this game to take advantage of an enemy being staggered to get a combo in, and to finish it with a visceral. Now, of course, depending on the situation, you might not have the stamina to do a combo, so of course, just going for the visceral is the smartest option. I'm saying this because I have been seeing a lot of people complain about how long the fights are, but if you play how the game was designed, most bosses should only take about 5 minutes at most, especially if you're not doing a single stat run, as myself. Most of my fights were less than 5 minutes, in all honesty. No clue how people are taking 10 minutes to fight a boss, but with that said, just remember to focus on combos, then going for a quick visceral. With all that said, Blade Phantom gives me an optional mission to take on another Phantom. So this would be a good segue to talk about optional bosses in this game, but I will save that for a bit later. Just be aware a lot of mechanics are locked behind optional missions, so it's usually wise to do them all to make sure you're not handicapping yourself, and trust me, I know, it happened to me. So for this mission, you take on an alternate version of Blade Phantom's second phase. Basically has the same combos, but they can be used in a different order, plus has a few new moves. Once beating this mission, I get access to Phantom abilities, which are like Nioh's guardian spirits in a way. For example, when Keshta the Unyielding gives stamina recovery, whereas when Veronica the Advocate is equipped, she increases your summon's damage. Make a mental note on that one, we'll be coming back to her in a bit. For the time being, I went with the stamina recovery. With now having Phantom abilities, I make my way to the next mission to learn about undead soldiers that once killed need to be double tapped to make sure they don't come back. Also learn that Dragonkin also like to hit the gym and swing around giant hammers. Seriously, look at that dragon's striations and his pecs, doing some serious bench pressing. I then meet Daphrona, essentially the firekeeper for Khazan. She is the one you can trade in soul stones to for upgrades, and I made the horrible mistake going with Lacrima gain increase instead of increasing my healing. I thought Lacrima would be rather hard to come by, but in actuality you get a lot of it if you do all missions. As I proceeded through the missions, I was introduced to Revenants, which are basically the same as Nioh Revenants, but instead of it being the other player's gear you can get, you just get random gear. Also at this point, I wasn't really reading and completely missed that summons are called Spirit of Also at this point, I wasn't really reading and completely missed that summons are called Spirit of Advocacy, which will bite me in the ass later. Coming to an end of the mission, I level my Willpower to 34 and spend my skill points on Brutal Attack Reap for healing when doing frontal viscerals for more survivability, Berserker Spirit for increase in spirit gain when attacking, and further increase Ironclad. With all that prep work done with, it's time to take on every newcomer's favorite boss, Viper. As you can tell, I changed out my armor. I decided to go with the War Hero set that you get from the Deluxe Edition. I figured I paid for early access, so I should be able to use it on my first run. This isn't my first time fighting Viper though. Back in the beta you could fight him, but they decided for the demo you could not. So it has been a good minute since I fought him, so it took me going a few rounds with him to figure him out again. I ended up dying a total of 6 times. An interesting thing in Khazan is that when you die, you actually earn Lacrimo, which is Khazan's versions of souls. I actually really like this feature. I know some people don't like it for some reason, but I think it's really smart. I feel this helps incentivize the player to keep trying the boss instead of going farm for levels on some basic enemies, when they would rather be fighting the boss itself. This cuts out the tedium of having to do boring grinding with actually being able to practice the boss and being able to level up if you so need to. A super cool feature, and fuck all those fragile ego people who say this makes the game too easy. They're full of shit. With that said, let's get into how I won this fight. For phase 1 of Viper, I just played it safe with parries and trying to get Gale off when I could. At this time point, I still wasn't using reflection or counterattacks, so I wasn't really able to play as aggressively as I should have. Once I finally broke Viper's stance, I went around Viper and used Ruthless to get as much damage off as possible, followed up by a Visceral. At this point, his health dropped past halfway, so he decided to power up, and you know this by him creating a giant tornado around himself. Once powered up, he has a few new attacks, but I didn't really need to worry about that with his health so low. I just needed to parry his long combo string to get a stun off, so I could use Ruthless into a swift attack combo to finish off phase 1 to go into phase 2. For phase 2, he becomes a massive brute, which seems like it would be harder, but in actuality I found this form to be easier than his skinny form to learn. All I had to do was parry or dodge his big slams to get Gale off, or when he does his brute attack, run around to his left side to avoid it completely to get Gale off. With those two things, I was easily able to get the break to combo him to the point of a Visceral to get him to power up for the second time, where he encases the entire arena in darkness and all you can see is his eyes, which was just super fucking cool. I really like how you have to follow his eyes to know where he'll pop out at. It was this fight from the beta that had me so hyped for this game, because if this was the only boss number 3, I could only imagine what the later boss fights would be like. This part's not too bad, you just need to survive long enough until he does his massive slam attack and then explosion. At this time, I would parry the slam and run away from the explosion, but the optimal move would have been to dodge the explosion to get free hits in. Also, the darkness might be gone, but he still keeps the new moveset he just showed off with his other moveset from earlier. Now, I was lucky after a few parries, I was able to get the horn break on him to stun him to get some free hits in. Which, if you didn't know, you can actually break his horn on his head for a stun break. With Viper's HP so low, I then waited for an opportunity to get behind him and use Ruthless to finish him off. See, as I stated earlier, you don't need reflection or counterattack to win, but it sure would have sped up this fight if I would have learned them. After this fight, we learned Khazan led the Empire's army with his friend Ozma into a war against the Dragonkin, winning the war, but then both of them being betrayed afterwards. Once again, the rich being ungrateful for the people who actually did the work. With Viper defeated, I traded in some soul stones to increase my healing and make the biggest mistake in this entire run. So, you know how earlier I was talking about Veronica, the Spirit of Advocacy? Well, because my dumbass didn't read this part where it states Spirit of Advocacies were summons. I assumed when I saw the damage increase 4% on Veronica, it was for me. So I equipped it, thinking it would help make this run easier. Guess how many bosses did it take until I realized this phantom ability doesn't help me at all? There are 16 bosses. You let me know in the comments what number did I find out after. Wishing I never had to experience that massive blunder, I then learned after this mission that you get memory points from collecting collectibles in each mission, which you can use to increase stamina damage, or damage multiplier. I figured with not being able to level proficiency, I would go with stamina damage for the time being. I then take on the next main mission where Khazan finds a village under attack by Dragonkin. I tried to save them, but the villager ended up taking an axe to the face. I think he'll be fine. I think. After watching that villager get his head cracked open like a piñata, I was then introduced to elite enemies. When you encounter an elite enemy in this game, the screen turns all frosty. Elite enemies are great for good armor drops, but once they die, they are permanently gone unless you reset the whole area by going to another mission. It's kind of a pain in the ass, in all honesty. With that elite enemy taken care of, I make it to the end of the mission to level my willpower to 42, which is starting to worry me since I am only at the 4th boss. I also at this time upgraded my skills. I decided to get Scar for Gale, which allows me to detonate the 10 stacks of Vigor and removes the stack, but dealing big damage. I also get Wind Piercer, which allows me to close gaps on enemies, and lastly I got Indomitable Spirit to help me with getting more spirit buildup. With upgrades out of the way, it's time for the 4th boss, Balbinino, aka Krampus on crack. This was the first major wall in the run for me, not because of only leveling willpower, strictly due to skill issues. This was the point it was biting me in the ass for not learning counterattacks or reflection. With only parrying, it was taking forever to lower the boss stamina bar, but the real tricky part was once the boss's health was lowered a bit, he ignites his nail, engulfing it in fire. The reason that this is an issue is when you parry an elemental attack, you will still take a slight tick damage with a slight elemental buildup. So parrying his nail isn't the best choice. Now you can counter this with reflection, but I didn't have it on at the time. I also did try to learn how to counterattack his burst attack, but for the life of me, I could not figure out the timing for it. I wasn't joking when I said I was bad at parrying. I am really bad at it. I was actually able to get him to have health twice, but I didn't last that long after that. So after the 10th death, I finally decided I needed to change a few things. First, I changed my armor to have 3 pieces of the Butcher's set, which would increase my swift attack damage multiplier and give me a chain to stack up to 5 stacks, which at max stacks is 25% more damage. For the other 2 pieces, I went with the hero set for the extra vitality and endurance. At this time, I had 2 skill points, so I got Fleet-Footed to decrease dodge stamina cost and Reflection. In retrospect, I should have gotten Swift for Reflection, but I wasn't making the best decisions at the time. Going back at it, and I still suck. I could not get Reflection down at all to save my life. So I said fuck it, and I kept fighting the boss until I got another skill point. You're probably thinking, why didn't I just unlearn a skill and apply it to Swift? Very simple. I completely forgot I could do that. So with getting the skill point, I gained Swift for Reflection, which makes the parry come out faster, and with having this skill, I was finally able to reflect some of his attacks to actually allowing me to get a chance to win, to just drop the ball like I always do. Like I say, it wouldn't be in the Kane video if I didn't fuck up at the last second. The way I ended up winning this fight was making sure to take advantage of stacking Gale with the chain stack to get as much damage boost as I could, and use Reflection on his nail attack that comes after his hammer slam to combo the beast with Ruthless into a visceral. Once he went into his second phase, I would go up the upper level and then get free hits in on him as he was climbing up and then jump down. In all honesty, you could keep doing this in a loop, but I found that a bit boring, so I just fought him normally. Anytime he would do his burst attack, I would make sure to just dodge to the right to avoid it and then get free hits in. Funny enough though, I was doing really well on my winning attempt until I missed with Ruthless after a reflection, allowing the boss to smack me to the point of using all of my heals while being on fire. But I wasn't going to let that stop me, so I kept pressuring him until I came out on top on my 21st attempt. After that fight, we are introduced to Elame, who is 100% sipping for Khazan. I then get a mission to teach me about Jarlings, which are definitely Kodamas in disguise. This mission allows me to access dungeon, where I can get lanterns to help with item discovery, reveal invisible walls, or even stop skeletons from reviving after being killed once. I also got another side mission to retake on Valbenino, where now he is a spirit that can teleport all over the room. Great. I was somehow able to pull it out the first try against him by some miracle. I then trade in some more soul stones for stronger heals and head off to Skullfoot Cave to blow up some spiders apparently. I'm also introduced to my least favorite enemy in the game, these fucking bats. I don't know why, but I struggle with these pieces of shit more than any other enemy, and I hate them. I hate them. I hate them. Once I finally killed the bat, I came across a poison area, which officially makes this a Souls game because every Souls game has a poison area. Also, fuck these rolling spiders, I hate them too. I eventually make my way through the poison-spider infested area to level my willpower to 52 and get this skill Whirlwind with swiftness to make the attack a bit faster. You know what that means? Boss time. I bet you couldn't have guessed the boss was going to be a spider. I definitely didn't see that one coming. To be honest, at first I thought this fight was going to be really hard since Artaria had some tricky attack patterns, but once I figured out her gimmick, she wasn't really that hard at all. The trick for her fight is to break her limbs, and yes, you heard me correctly, breaking limbs like in Monster Hunter. Which, yes, we need more of this in soul boss fights. I freaking love limb breaks, they're so satisfying, we need more of them. So, you can actually lock on to either her arms and attack them to the point of breaking them off. But, you want to make sure you weaken both before breaking one, since if you don't break the other one in time, she will run away and regenerate the other arm. But, hold up, not just her arms can be broken, but her ass too, if you know what I mean. Wink wink. So, the quickest way to beat her is to break both of her arms and then run to her backside and then break that, like the gentleman that you are. By doing this, you will take massive chunks out of her health. Also, I learned on my winning attempt as she is running away up the wall, you can actually knock her down with a well-timed javelin throw, which also does a lot of damage to her. Now, a second ago I said she was easy, well, apparently she heard me and proceeded to smack me around until I only had a sliver of HP left, but from my previous experience with spider women, I knew her weaknesses. I giant javelin to the face, and that's how I beat Artaria on my 8th attempt. After the fight, once again we see LMA sipping for Khazan, but Khazan being a bit of a Chad, not showing no interest in her whatsoever. Definitely blue balling her for sure. With that mission completed, I unlocked the blacksmith to then get a side mission to actually unlock the blacksmith. Yeah, I don't get the decision, Neoplea. Neoplea? I also just realized this as well as typing this up. This is the same development team that makes Dungeon Fighter Online, and I fucking love that game. Sorry, I got a bit sidetracked. I then completed the side mission to get the blacksmith actually unlocked, which now I can craft armor sets and items. Speaking of gear, I would like to give my opinion on it at this time. I do really like the armor set perks and attributes you can get on armor and weapons, but the only gripe I have with the whole thing is weapon scaling. I have beaten the game and at no point does any weapon go past a B scaling or C scaling. In the demo, we got to see a B+, but in the official release, nothing. Which makes me think they were going to have different letter scalings, but changed their mind. Which kind of sucks for me since I'm stuck with willpower and I'll have to work with just a B scaling. It would have been nice if they would have done something like in Liza P, where you can use an item to actually increase the letter grade of one of the stats while lowering the other one. Hopefully in their next game they take that into account because at the moment the letter scaling the way it is feels a bit pointless. Which is my only gripe with weapons and armors, everything else is fine. Moving on. Once again, I make the mistake of trading in soul stones for Lacrima increase, and then I'm sent off to Pale Neon, which is currently being ransacked by bandits. So I make my way through the town, level my willpower to 60, get the skill Phantom Sword Dance, smash for Gale, which is just absolutely busted, and further upgraded Fleet-Footed to take on the bandit leader, Rankus. Rankus is the first main humanoid boss fight in this game, which teaches the player that humanoid bosses can regain stamina just like the player can, unlike monsters where they cannot recover their stamina. Not only that, Rankus can quickly recover his stamina by chugging some alcohol, which kinda sucks. So at first I thought Rankus was going to be an easy fight since on my first attempt I got him past half health, but he proved to be a bit more difficult than I gave him credit for. He ended up killing me 19 times. His first phase really wasn't the problem, it was his second phase. In his second phase, his hammer bowgun becomes a hammer bowgun flamethrower, which in all honesty is really cool. What was also really cool is that he has a grappling hook that he can use to maneuver around the arena to shoot you with his hammer bowgun. A bit tricky to dodge at times, but a very unique attack. But let's get to how I beat him. For phase 1, at the start of the fight, he will always start with the same combo where he slams his hammer followed by a twirl, by a delayed attack. This delayed attack can be reflected, which taught me bosses' delayed attacks can be reflected. After reflecting the attack, I get behind the boss to go for a combo. After that, I just parried until I could get a posture break for a visceral combo. I also found that Gale can stop Rankus from hook clawing away, which was really neat to find out. With just Gale and some combos, I was able to get the boss to his second phase, where I found you can get some nice back attacks after he does his slam attacks. When he does his charge attack into a grab, I make sure to rush toward him to make him stop shooting sooner and wait for the right time to dodge to the right to not get grabbed by the grab attack. For his spinning flame attack, I tried running away from it, but never found that it worked out, so I just wait until the flames get close to me and start dodging away from them. Afterwards, he does a slam attack where I could get a quick Gale off to then dodge the explosion. Yes, you heard me correctly, you can dodge explosions and you can even parry some of them in this game. From here, I just waited for a good opening to get a posture break for a ruthless combo into a visceral for the win. After the fight, we learned from Tristan, the one-eyed friend, that Pavel was not the one that backstabbed us. So our journey continues to find the real traitor. Once back at the hub, I remember about memory points and make sure to dump those into stamina damage and damage increase. I then immediately rush over to Nadine for the next mission where I get my ass handed to me multiple times by this damn magical rapier using skeleton. Fuck him. Fuck him. He's probably Scully's long-lost cousin because the amount of times he keeps fucking me in the ass. Oh, great. There's an elite version of them. Perfect. I finally make it to the end of the mission where I get my willpower to 69, so we know we're in for a good time. And get the skill Stamina for Ruthless, Persistence for Wind Piercer, get Whirlwind to level 2, and max out Fleet-Footed. With all that done, it's time to take on this game's version of Ornstein and Smo, Malika. This boss was just fucking insane. I did take him on pre-nerf just for a reference, but from what I have researched, the nerf wasn't anything major, and from what I can tell, it's a better curve in difficulty from the previous boss, because let me tell you, this bad boy was rough. Also on that note, they also buffed 7 other bosses, so please don't bitch in the comments about the nerf when they also buffed 7 other bosses. The devs do need to make sure the difficulty scaling is properly balanced, and I can agree, Malika was way harder than Radkus. I will also leave a link to the devs' reasoning for the balance adjustment. Alright, so let's get back to the actual fight. Malika's first phase is really chill. Most of his attacks are slow, so they're easy to parry. On top of that, he has a very easy attacks to use reflection on. You can reflect his poke attack, and you can reflect his overhead attack. Personally, I like to do the overhead attack since I can parry all of his other attacks to help get his stamina lower. To reflect the overhead attack, just wait until you see him fully stand up and then reflect and you should get it off. The only other thing I would make note of for the first phase is when he does his burst attack, I made sure to dodge behind it to get back attacks in. Besides that, that's all I did to beat his first phase consistently. Now for the real fight, his second phase. In this phase, he starts off immediately with a jump attack, followed by a shockwave attack that you can see by the white outline moving away and then back in to cause an explosion, which all I had to do was parry the slam and run away to avoid the explosion. Then comes the Virgil attack where Malika slows down time and unleashes the most anime move ever, which if hit by will cause chaos buildup, which is like DS1's curse where it reduces your HP, but unlike Dark Souls 1, it doesn't instantly kill you. For a good while, I thought I had to parry this attack, so I kept trying over and over again, until someone from chat told me to try and dodge it, and sure enough, that's all I had to do to not get hit by it. So once surviving that attack, I learned that he can instantly teleport slash you, which you can parry, but it will cause chaos buildup, so it's actually better to dodge it than to parry it. So I tried this phase for over 20 times until I realized maybe I should try out some different armor, so I went back to the hub to craft Hound armor and to get some more skills to help with my dodge iframes to see if that would help me out a bit. It did a little bit of help. until I found out this son of a bitch can heal, and not just a little bit, a fucking lot. This is probably the only mechanic I am not fond of in this entire fight, since you can't stop it in phase 2. You can in phase 1, but not in phase 2. It will just randomly happen too, and you can't stop it. So 20 more tries go by and nothing. So I went and checked to see if I missed some optional missions that might help out, and I for sure did. I missed a mission that allows me to augment my lower level gear to higher level gear. So I did that and added 3 pieces of butcher armor with 2 pieces of hound armor for all that extra damage and went back to it. This fight forced me to get good, which slightly pissed me off at first, but the more I fought Malika, the more he started becoming my favorite boss. I full-on experienced Stockholm Syndrome with this dude. I kept learning more and more every time I fought him, which just kept getting me excited. I learned to parry all of his slash attacks. I learned when he does his dash attack, he will follow up with him running, which I did the same. The reason I do this is he could do 2 attacks here. He can do this twirl attack into a massive whirlwind attack, and by running away, it will set me up to get behind him for free hits. The other attack he can do is a chaos slash attack, which since you're already running away, you should be safe, but I would dodge just to be extra safe. Then I learned when he does his other dash attack, he will follow up with his sword attacks, and after doing this twice, he finishes with a final dash attack. And the only other attack I had to look out for was his grab, which of course I could use the audio cue to dodge. But we're not done yet. After a while, he'll go back to his greatsword phase, which is just the same as phase 1, which is great for getting damage off on him, and was the main time I would do damage to him. Now, once he gets to about 1/4 of his health, his greatsword phase changes a bit, with him doubling up on attacks and shooting air blasts for a good while. Really, the best time to attack him is when he does his 3 jump attack. They can all be parried followed up by swift attacks, and on the last jump I could easily get Gale off. The other attack I looked for was the same combo he used on phase 1 to use Reflect on. With learning all these things and trying for over 3 hours and 30 minutes and dying 51 times, I finally won. Motherfucker! Make that 52 deaths then, but I fucking did it. The game told me to get good, and I fucking got good. And even now, after all that suffering, this is still one of my favorite fights in the game. With Malika defeated, I earned the Phantom form, which is the same as Nioh 2's yokai form. At this point, the game gives me more optional missions with side bosses, which I would like to discuss. So, side bosses in this game are either old bosses in their second phase with some new moves, or elite enemies with a boss bar. Personally, I would prefer more unique optional bosses, but I do have to say the reused bosses are still better to me than what Dark Souls 1 did, or even Lies of P's boring optional bosses. Sorry, but the optional bosses in that game are just not great. I do like that the reused bosses do have a unique new moveset and start in the second phase. Now, is this ideal? No. But for this team's first Souls-like game, it's okay. Just like I was okay with how optional bosses were handled in Lies of P, since it was that team's first Souls-likes as well. With how much effort they put into the main bosses, I understand why they couldn't have unique optional bosses. And I would say it was the wise decision to do so, since most people will not do all missions. So for what the optional bosses are, I think they are fine, and some of them are even more fun than the main bosses. But I will just be focusing on the main bosses when talking about them and occasionally referencing some of the optional fights that I thought were memorable. With that talking point done with, let's move on to the next mission. Khazan and Elame discover a hidden laboratory in El Ravaka, where Elame is kidnapped, where we find her being injected with chaos and find out the Empire has been experimenting on monsters and humans, making them into abominations. Through exploring the laboratory, Khazan finds the power source and turns it off to rescue Elame. But it is too late, she has been consumed by chaos, and now Khazan must kill his biggest fan, Dash Sim. Before the fight though, I got my willpower to 84 and got a few more skills, and regrettably put points into Phantom form, which really wasn't worth it, but further upgraded Wind Piercer to make it broken, and I get Blowback Vengeance because I'll be blowing that girl's back out. Overall, Elme was not that hard of a boss. I did die 8 times to her, but she wasn't near as crazy hard as Malika. For this fight, I decided to go with the full Butcher set since I can make it now. All I had to do for her first phase was parry her shield attacks to get staggers off to do some wombo combos on her, and anytime she would do a charge attack, run behind her and smack that behind. Now, things got a bit trickier during her second phase when she starts going nuts with her lightning attacks, but nothing some well-timed dodges couldn't fix. I will say for this fight, you do need to be careful about hitting her when her shield is up, because you will buff it that way. So she does punish those playing too aggressively, which I learned the hard way on my 7th attempt, when I was about to win and she staggered me into a grab and killed me. It's alright, I got back to this point again, and on my 9th attempt to just have 1 HP in a dream. The exact same scenario, but this time I wasn't going to drop the ball. I was ready this time with my trusty Beyblade attack to come out on top. Sadly, being on top was just too much for Elme to handle, and she died. But at least she went out the way she would have wanted to go, riding that dick. After that lovely fight, I spent some more memory points on damage increase and head off to the mines to find a giant kitty cat that wants to play. For this fight, my willpower was 90 and picked up some new skills to use in this fight to help with easier reflection and spirit game on brink dodges. With that said, let's get into Shakta. I did not really struggle with Shakta. Personally, I think it's one of the easier fights in the game. The boss has a very clear visuals for parrying and even for getting reflections off. He does a lot of attacks where he's left open for easy hits. The only attacks that caught me off guard were his bite attacks and his really long delayed attack. Besides that, I was easily able to beat this boss on my 4th attempt. I would say this would be a good example of Shakta's optional boss fight is better than the original fight. Shakta is sped up here and more aggressive, which makes dealing with him a lot harder than the main version. After this fight, we learned that it was Ozma's plan all along, and he was the one who betrayed us. 100% getting some Berserk vibes here. And we also see Ozma has taken over the Empire. From here, I head off to Alvaray. I figured this would be the best place to talk about map designs. So, as y'all already know, Khazan is a mission-based game with its missions being fairly linear. The thing is, at the beginning, the maps are pretty small, but once you get to mid-game, the maps get much larger, especially near the end of the game, where it was taking me almost like an hour to make it to the final boss. Remember, I was looking for every item, plus dying every now and then, but still, these maps are much larger than you would expect. Personally, I like linear games, so this isn't an issue for me, but I know a lot of people don't like that stuff, but I wanted it to be shown the maps do get bigger and do have some exploration that can be done. It's not a Final Fantasy 13 case. With that said, I trekked through this massive mission to make it to the 10th boss, Troka. Oh dear lord, I fear what the internet will do to you. 10 out of 10 game, take my money. With Scully drooling in the corner, let's talk about the boss fight. For this fight, my willpower was 96. Troka was not an easy boss for me. In fact, she was the fight that got me to start using counterattacks. That is correct. I went 10 bosses without ever using a counterattack. But for her, I had to learn it if I was going to win this fight. The reason I needed to learn it is that she didn't have too many opportunities for reflection to be used besides one attack that I found when she's swinging her umbrella. But even if you pressure her, she doesn't always do this attack. Now, she does do her burst attack quite often, especially when she enters her second phase, which was another problem for me. When she would do her super attack, I didn't have enough stamina to run away from the projectiles, so I was forced to parry them and accept the chip damage that came along with them. But at the end of the attack, she will always do a burst attack, which made me realize I was going to have to learn to counter this. So, after dying 14 times, I had accumulated 4 skill points and put them all into the counterattack tree. With that, I went back in and started practicing countering her burst attacks. It took me a minute, but I did find a consistent way of doing it. When she goes for her burst attack, she dives at you, but it can be kind of hard to see, so I like to look at the bottom left-hand corner of my character, and when I see she is right next to me, I do the counter, and sure enough, it worked every time for me. This also works for her normal burst attack as well. The only other thing I needed to do to win this fight was make sure when she summons the rain clouds to hit her to stop them so she doesn't leave electric puddles on the ground that can hurt you, and use Wind Piercer whenever I got the chance to help with consistent damage. I was able to win this fight on my 26th attempt. We then learned Troka was a student of Ozma's and was manipulated by him to use chaos to hunt down a dark elf, which now we will be going looking for ourselves to see why Ozma was going hunt her down. Before heading out, I trade in some soul stones for stronger heals, get my willpower to level 99, and increase my armor level. It's at the start of the next mission when a chatter asks me about phantom abilities that I finally realize my colossal fuck up. If you guess after 10 bosses, you were correct. So for more than half of the game, I technically went without using a phantom ability, unknowingly made this run harder than it needed to be. After realizing how big of a dumbass I was, I headed back to Skulfa Cave to get the Ghost Hammer so that I could obtain Wolfric, which will increase my damage when attacking enemies from the front. With that fuck up fix, I find the Dark Elf Bellarine, who mistakes me for one of Ozma's assassins, so I have to fight her. I have to say, the devs have done a fantastic job with mage fights in this game. I stated in my DS2 first playthrough that I wish the devs would have been more creative with the way their mage boss fights went, and I'm happy to see that in this game they actually did that, and not only Bellarine, but Troka and the other ones you fight after this as well. The only part of this fight that bothered me was her second half when she goes full necromancers and starts summoning ads.
She can summon me anytime she likes.
Shut up, Scully. Personally, I'm not a fan of ads in this fight, but I am happy the devs actually allow you to stop her from summoning ads if you attack her. So this does balance it out for me in the fairness department, since there's a way to actually stop it. Bellarine's first phase wasn't too hard to deal with. Her attacks are easy to dodge, plus if you pressure her, it's easier to stagger her. Also, you can reflect the last hit of her staff combo to help with reducing her stamina. I didn't have too much trouble getting her to her second phase, but this is where things started to get hard. At first, I had no clue I could stop her summon, so I let her get her full charge up, and she summoned the Reaper, who killed me with no issues. Oh, also, he can summon ads as well. Now, later on, you can actually go fight the Reaper one-on-one in a side mission, which was very helpful in actually learning how to fight him. But at this time, I was not in the mood to try and learn his attack pattern, so I opted into DPS Bellarine down before that. So, after a few rounds with the Reaper, I finally tested if I could stop her from summoning, and as y'all already know, I can. The thing is, even if you stop her, she will throughout the fight slowly charge it back up and will summon other ads in the meantime, and depending on how many skulls she has above her head will determine what ads pop out. One skull is just some skeletons with greatswords that go away after they attack, 2 skulls is 3 dogs, 3 skulls is 4 archers, and 4 skulls is a skeleton assassin. Everything from 3 down was easy to deal with. The assassin, not so much. So after my 6th attempt, I knew I needed some better gear, so I went farm Rankus to get bandit spoils to make the Furious Bandit set. Also, I would like to say how much I love being able to go back and fight previous bosses. It is a great way to practice them instead of having to make save states like you would have to do in other Souls-like games to do so. The reason I wanted this set was the 10% damage multiplier increase, but more importantly for the charge attack increase by 20%, since this would supercharge my Gale attack. Also, when doing a charge attack, my weapon now gets ignited with fire, which is just really cool, and gives me some extra damage. The only downside is that I'll only be able to craft level 89 gear since I'm level 90, so from now on I will have to farm gear to feed to this set to help with defense and damage. Hey everyone, Editor Kane here. So recently the devs just came out with an update, and the level acquired gear was one of the things they changed. So instead of it being based off the player level, it will now be based off the amount of Lacrima that you gain, which is going to be great for future runs, but sadly for this run, I had to grind out all that shit. So just wanted to let you all know it is no longer a heinous process, and it'll actually be really chill. With that said, let's get back to the run. On the plus side to all this, Wolfric got to level 13 due to all the grinding. With all that prep work done, I went back to it. My strategy was simple, DPS her as fast as possible in the second phase so she can't summon the Assassin or Reaper, which almost worked 2 times, but she was able to run away and get the Reaper out before I could kill her. But finally, on my 26th attempt, I was finally able to pressure her to the point that she only ever got to summon once before I was able to finish her off. After the fight, Khazan explains the misunderstanding, and she explains that Ozma came across a new source of power that he believed he needed to use to take out the Berserker dragon, but ended up becoming obsessed with that new power. So with that, Bellarine joins our team to help us out. With clearing things up with Bellarine, I learned that I have massively been neglecting my memory points. Come to find out, to claim the points, you need to hover over the mission. I had no clue of this, so I ended up handicapping myself once again when I could have had more damage. With that done, I headed out to Vizir to find Khazan's old comrade Scapel, who has been forcibly consumed by chaos due to Ozma, and we have to put him out of his misery. Before this fight though, I dumped a whole bunch of skill points into Death's Denial and Reinforce, which I kind of regret doing, but it did help me with this fight. Scapel wasn't too tricky of a fight to figure out. Early on, I figured out how to reflect his overhead attack and counter-attack his burst attack. The only two scary attacks he had were his grab attacks, which could be tricky to dodge since they could grab you from behind, and his coffin AoE attack. But out of curiosity, I actually attacked his coffin to see if it would stop the attack, and it sure did. It's nice to see what I learned from the other bosses are helping me with dealing with the new ones. So once figuring out those few things, I easily took out my old friend. Or I thought I did until he came back to life. I should have known, since no equipment dropped after the mission complete logo. The second phase was very tricky for me. I, in all honesty, did not really learn this phase that well. Once I learned he damages himself in this phase, my plan simply became to survive as long as possible until he kills himself. I'm also glad that I did have Death's Denial on my winning attempt because it's the only reason I was able to survive the first half of his second phase. Now, the first half of his second phase is quite sporadic, but if you survive long enough, he does cycle back to his old moveset, which you can take advantage of to do more damage to him. Once I got his health to about 10%, I just stayed back and waited for him to kill himself, and sure enough, it worked out on my 21st attempt. After this fight is when Phantom tells you about Chaos, and that was the unknown power that Ozma is using, and that now Khazan and his plans are now one and the same. Surprisingly, after beating Scapel, I didn't get level 100 gear, even though he was level 100. So I went off and did the level 101 to 108 missions, and none of the enemies gave me gear above level 98. I even went to beat Remnant of Elame, which is a much harder boss fight than her original fights, and I still didn't get any gear that was above level 98. And she was a level 108 boss. Also, I need to point this out. Why the fuck can't Ruthless kill a boss when it's doing its multiple slash attack? And it clearly should kill it, and the boss gets away and then kills me. This is really stupid in all honesty, and it should be fixed. Back on topic. This then led to me to believe that I can only get gear drops 8 levels above my character level until I found an elite enemy on the same mission as Remnant of Elame that dropped level 120 gear. So, seeing that, I farmed this enemy for an unnecessarily long amount of time to get all my gear to level 120. When come to find out, if I would have just gone to the next zone, the common enemies there would have dropped to level 124 gear. This threw me off so hard, and I'm still confused as to why I never got gear between level 100 and 119. Either way, I further upgraded my gear and moved on to the next boss, Princess Elena. I struggled pretty hard with Elena's first phase. She uses a rapier and is very fast with it, and it took a good amount of attempts before I could actually start seeing her moves and them not looking all blurry. The trickiest thing to figure out was when to reflect her thrust attack, since when she dashes at you, she could do 3 different moves and they all were pretty hard to tell apart. Eventually, I was able to last long enough through all that thrusting to make it to the second phase. It took me some time to get used to being the one thrusted and not being the one thrusting. For her second phase, she becomes more defensive while using magic. She has a cool attack where she uses music notes to send multiple shockwaves at you, and depending on how many notes she shows is how many times she will do this attack. She's actually a lot easier in this phase to get hits in. Sadly though, I was still struggling a bit here, so after my 15th death, I decided I need to change my skills up a bit. So I unlearned all my Phantom skills because I just didn't find them that useful, and decided to check out Maxed Reversal and Maxed Deftness. Which Deftness was super good, due to it increasing my dodge distance and being able to dash quicker forward. I completely regret not getting this skill sooner. It would have made a lot of other boss fights easier. Reversal, on the other hand, was not that great. I could see it being useful depending on the situation, but it actually hindered me in this fight. So after 2 attempts with reversal, I decided to unlearn it and put those points into other basic attacks and increasing spirit skills. So now with my skills now where I want them, I went back in with a new plan. So for phase 1, I would play it safe and wait to get a reflect off to go Ruthless into Deafness into Whirlwind, or would do Ruthless into Wind Piercer into a swift combo into Whirlwind to get her into her second phase. Once in the second phase, I would make sure to pressure her as much as I could, but would make sure to take advantage of when she would do her magic missile attack to get behind her to set up a Gale attack combo. Usually after this, I would go for Gale again, but on my winning attempt, she stopped me from doing it and went back into her Rapier phase, with now having magic attacks with it. Instead of playing it aggressively here, I played passive and waited until she went back into her magic phase since it's a lot less risky to attack her then. Once back in the magic phase, I just repeated the Gale setup, but this time with her health so low, I used Wind Piercer for the win on my 20th attempt. It would have been a quicker fight if I could have gotten Gale's scar off, but it is what it is. After liberating the princess from Ozma's control, I upgrade my gear's level some more, trade in more soul stones for bigger heals, max out my damage multiplier increase, got the whirlwind chain ability, and headed off to Vetalon City, where I cleansed the streets of all the chaos corrupted monsters to find that Ozma brought back Hismar back to life. Which is just really fucking cool that we actually get to fight the Berserker Dragon that we were told about from the beginning of the game, and he did not disappoint. Also, he has a pimp slap, so that makes his fight a 10 out of 10 in my book. Funny enough, he doesn't have a hard pattern to figure out, but he hits like a fucking freight train, so I was easily 2-tapped by him. I tried a few times to see if I could reflect any of his attacks, but couldn't seem to find one, but I'm sure there are a few you can probably do it to, I just couldn't figure it out. My main focus was just parrying attacks and smacking his face. You see, you can actually break both of his horns, which take a massive chunk out of his stamina bar, which again, yes, more limb breaks please. Before going into how I won this fight, I just wanted to gush over how epic this fight was. This fight felt like I was having a real epic bout with a giant-sized dragon. This is the first dragon fight in a Souls game that actually felt like a dragon fight. And yes, it felt better than Midir. Now, I never fought Baal from Elden Ring, and there's a very good chance he is more epic, but for right now, Hismar is my favorite dragon fight out of all Souls games. It's not just how epic his moves look, it's also how the camera plays into enhancing the fight, moving in and out showing how large this beast you are fighting is, and how small you are. On top of all that, this guy fights similar to Nergigante. Seriously, he even has the same crash dive attack move. It was a fantastic experience, and I enjoyed every second of this fight, and look forward to it again in my strength only run to have the chance to use his armor set, or just to do it anyways just so I can fight him multiple times. Now, how did I win this fight? My main focus was going for the horns as soon as possible to weaken them, but not before I could get the first visceral off. I wanted them to break after so that I can get more viscerals quickly. Whirlwind, Ruthless, and Wind Piercer were great skills in helping to get horn breaks, especially Whirlwind since I could launch myself into the air to hit his head when it was raised. Once he gets to half health, he goes into his second phase where he starts using chaos attacks and becomes a lot more aggressive. Also, be very careful of the lightning from the ground, it ruined my previous win attempt, which would have been really badass since I sniped him with the javelin. With Hismar's stamina bar being so low at this point, I decided to go for another visceral attempt before the second horn break to make this fight finish a lot safer. So I get the visceral and then patiently wait for the chance to break his second horn, which did get a bit spicy at times, but I was able to pull it off in the end. With that opportunity, I went all out with Wind Piercer to get the final visceral to slay the Berserker Dragon, Hismar. With Hismar defeated, I upgrade my javelin and upgrade my gear level, finished off some side missions to get more memory points to increase my stamina damage, and made my way to the Great Temple. The interesting thing that happened to me at the Great Temple was realizing how much inspiration from other Souls games had on this one. You could see the homage to DS1 with the archways with the ranged enemies, or even the rafters with the chandelier that you can knock down to get items. Or even the monster that looks like the cleric beast from Bloodborne. You can really tell the devs love the other games and wanted to show that love in this one. With that said, I made it to the end of the mission to find that Ozma has done the unthinkable. He brought back Reese, his dead wife, back to life using the power of chaos, and now we have to kill her again. Reese at first seemed like she was going to be a pretty chill mage fight, until her second phase where she goes full Magic Reaper mode with her scythe, warping around, bending time, and manipulating gravity. Then things started to get a bit tricky. Unfortunately, only after my first attempt against her, my game bugged out, which was the first one I had in this entire run of the game, so I closed the game and restarted it. But I forgot my second recording doesn't like it if you close the game, so chat will be on screen for a bit. Reese's first phase is pretty straightforward, just dodge magic attacks and hit her anytime she does ground attacks, which are usually the best times to get Gale off. Also, her burst attack is the same as Troka, so you can use the same trick I showed you for her on Reese. Once she gets past half health, she becomes more aggressive. Now, you can get lucky and she will do mostly burst attacks, or you'll get unlucky and she starts spamming her magic walls while shooting missiles at you. Hopefully the former happens to you and not the latter. Besides that, there wasn't much to figure out to her first phase. Moving on to the real fight though, the second phase. This phase is quite a bit more complex than her first phase. She still has her magic missile attack, but some of them are delayed now, which took some time adjusting to. She also has a scythe combo that you can reflect at the end, which you can tell when to reflect when you see her fly back and twirl, which is a great time to get a combo off on her. It was also here that I learned you actually stun the boss when you use the skill Reflect, but not always when you use counterattack. By stunning the boss, you can actually combo them without them escaping. If they are not stunned, like in some cases with counterattacks, they can escape, or worse, armor through and just smack you, which becomes very important to know for the next boss fight. So, for the first part of this phase, I just waited for her scythe combo to punish it with Ruthless into Deftness into Swift attacks into a quick Gale setup for the fire buff into a Visceral, followed up by a Wind Piercer to get some tick damage off, which pushed her to her real fight phase. She will now shoot magic missiles at you when she does some of her scythe attacks, and unfortunately she does it when you would normally reflect her, which I honestly thought was great because Des knew you would be reflecting that attack and we're like, nah, you're not doing that one anymore. She still has her burst attack though in this phase, but you need to be careful because she can cancel it at any time, but no worries, even if you do the counterattack, you can still dodge afterwards if you react fast enough. Another major move she has is this warp combo. The first warp just does 1 slash, the second warp does 2 consecutive slashes, and the third warp is a delayed attack followed up by a quick slash and her placing a gravity ball on the floor. Simply, dodge to live. I could not find anything else I could reflect once her health was past halfway, so I just focused on parries, counterattacks, getting some hits in when I could, and making sure to use Wind Piercer occasionally for chip damage. Also, the biggest factor to winning this fight, do not be in phantom form after posture breaking the boss. I lost a win attempt due to how little damage phantom form does. So on my actual win attempt, I used phantom form near the end to posture break Reese, but immediately canceled it out so that I could use Visceral into Wind Piercer for the win on my 28th attempt. I know I just said a lot, and the funny part is, I barely explained all of her mechanics. I just gave y'all a small taste. With killing our dear friend to liberate her from Ozma's control, it's time we pay Ozma a visit. Ozma by far is the hardest fight in this entire game, especially if you do the true ending, which makes you take on a third phase. Not only does he have 3 phases, his first phase alone has 15 or more attacks you'll need to learn, and that's just the first phase. This was a fight that literally tested my actual willpower because I would constantly make it to the second or third phase to die in 1 hit or 2 hits, and they weren't short fights either. I fought Ozma so many times I could actually no-hit his first phase, but only that one. The game was once again asking me to get good, so I hunkered down and got to work. And after 45 deaths and 3 hours and 45 minutes, I finally got good, and this was my winning attempt. Enjoy. Ozma was an immaculate final boss to finish on. It took everything that other bosses were teaching you and asked you to use all of them in one single fight. I couldn't have asked for a more epic final boss. By the end of it all, he became my favorite boss fight in the entire game. I would also like to state at no point did I feel like the game was being unfair during boss fights. When I died or got hit, it felt like it was my fault, which even motivated me more to want to get better. I just want to say Nepali did a fantastic job with this game with its combat mechanics and more importantly fun and engaging bosses. The most fun I had with boss fights in a Souls game in a good while. The game is not perfect, no game is, but it's definitely one of my favorites and I look forward to playing more of it. With all that said, if you've enjoyed this video and would like to see more like it, hit that subscribe button. At this time, I would also like to thank my channel supporters. If you too would like to support the channel or have your name in the video, you can click the Patreon link in the description or click the YouTube join button. I also from time to time stream my runs, so you can catch me streaming on YouTube or over on Twitch at Arcane Gaming. I want to thank you all for watching, and until next time, take care.